Hi, I'm Tash. Um, I'm 29 and I have a little boy called Louis and a husband called Sam. And I'm a teacher, but currently on maternity leave. And I was fostered at the age of 4 with my little sister, who was 10 months at the time. We were put into care because our birth parents just didn't have the capacity to look after us, and we were kind of being neglected, starved a little bit. Um, yeah, so we were put into care with a big family with a like mum, dad, a brother, and then 3 girls, and then stayed there ever since. So when I talk about my family, they're the family that I'm generally talking about. If I'm talking about like my birth mum, I'll usually say my birth mum. My birth mum, she has like additional needs, so she kind of functions on the level of a child, and she's currently in a supported living house with other similar adults, and she's really happy there. Um, so she just didn't really have the capacity. I think they could cope with just me, like barely. So I didn't really fall under the radar until my little sister came along. So thankfully, due to her, we were able to get picked up, and I know that I wouldn't be where I am today, um, like professionally or family wise, if it wasn't for being put into care and having the family that looked after me and still looks after me. So we were actually something called a residence order. I don't know if that's a thing in England, but in Northern Ireland it basically means so we couldn't quite be fully adopted because I think it was to do with our birth parents' capacity. They couldn't sign papers to allow that to happen. So we were residence orders, which meant we had to stay with our foster family until we were 18. But thankfully, the way that um, it was basically adoption, but not fully adoption, so still fostering. Um, so it wasn't like we felt like we had to stay there. It was like we wanted to stay there. We were happy there, because like my parents' children really like welcomed us and made us feel. When I'm talking about my siblings, I'm talking about them. I still see them. Like one of my sisters is in Birmingham, and I see her a couple of times a month with her kids and stuff. So, um, yeah, I don't just see that I've got one sister. I see that I've got 6 siblings. I think up until the age of about 8, Um, I would go, me and my sister would go once a month, generally to the house that we grew up in those early days. And my foster mum, Barbara, she would take us and we'd spend about an hour there. She always had to be there for the visits just as I guess, a safety thing. And generally, I think all the adults got on quite well. And then after the age of 8, we didn't have any contact with our birth dad and haven't had any since then. Um, but didn't really care. My adoptive dad, Brian, he just filled that void, that space that a dad would fill. So never really felt like I was missing out. Paula, my birth mum, I think she understands to the best of her abilities that she wasn't able to effectively care for the two of us together, and from pretty early on developed quite a good relationship with Barbara, my foster mum, because it was almost like Barbara was kind of her mum too. So like she would take us after the age of 8. We were just seeing our mum and not in the same house anymore. We would go to pick her up from where she was living in the supported housing. So we'd go for coffee, go for lunch, go for dinner, and often like Barbara would be paying for it all. Um, so like kind of taking the 3 kids out for dinner. So they have quite a good relationship. Yeah, I remember doing these activities, and I still have them at home in Northern Ireland. These massive, big, like A3 sheets that they would then laminate. So, like my whole kind of life story type thing. So it would have like the family tree, and different things, I guess, to get me to understand why we were where we were and what the story kind of was. Barbara and Brian, they're a fab pair. Again, it was only a handful of years ago that I found out why they started fostering. So they they started having kids quite young. I think it was before they had kids that they decided that they were going to help children after they started having their kids. So they used to live up in Belfast, and there was mum was a neonatal nurse, and she has been a neonatal nurse for like 40 plus years. She's retired now, but she was caring for a little girl, and there were concerns about her safety and stuff like that, and mum basically inquired and they wanted to adopt this little girl and like give her a better life because she wasn't really being looked after properly. But the parents or the family fought it and fought them, as you know, as you would. It's your child, but they felt like they could give her a better life, and she wasn't being cared for properly. So they did inquire, but they weren't allowed to do anything because the family wouldn't give permission. So then she got cared for in hospital, and then when she was ready to go, she left. And then sadly, I remember my dad saying, and he got quite teary when he was saying this. He barely saw him cry in all of his years of life. He was popping into the shop one day to get bread and milk, and he saw a paper in the sand, and it said something like a young girl of like 8, I think it was, dies in caravan fire. And then when they read, it was her. Um, I'm not sure of the details of the fire or anything like that, but yeah, that really hit them hard, and they decided from that point on they were going to do all they could to help as many children as possible. Yeah, just all the years where maybe I told them I hated them, or massive big arguments, as families do. That really, yeah, kind of blew me away as to why they wanted to foster, and they've helped so many children. So they have a son and then 3 daughters that are their birth children, and then I don't even know how many children they have, because I think they fostered before me and my sister came along, and then they fostered after me and my sister were adopted. Um, so like, they've helped a lot of children. Tend to see her each time I'm home for like 5 days or more. So a couple of times a year, I always make a point of like Christmas, Easter if we're home, like the big things. And I always send her stuff for like Mother's Day or her birthday and things like that. But where she's living, she loves it, and she's really really happy there. Yeah, and she has a really good quality of life, which is nice.